Hi, I'm Kimberly.
And I'm Sherry.
Let us tell you a little bit about our podcast,
Lemonade and Sunshine. We're going to be talking to real people who have made lemonade with the lemons in their lives to help strengthen other people with their challenges.
We all need to know that there's hope and light even on our darkest days. And if you've ever felt alone in your struggles, and who hasn't, come and listen and sip lemonade in the sunshine with us.
Thank you so much for joining us on Lemonade and Sunshine today. We're glad to have you back on the podcast. We are very excited about our episode today. It is going to be on service and what service does for us and what happens to us when we do service for others. I'm going to let Kim take it now, and then she'll also be introducing our awesome guest speaker who I've just met, but we're so happy to have, Brenda. So go ahead, Kim. What do you have to say about service?
Well, I feel like this episode is kind of a different approach in that instead of focusing on the cause of our loneliness, we're focusing on one of the remedies for it, which is service. Right. So I know for me in my life, service has been a healing balm. Like when I've reflected on hard times, it's been through serving others that has really gotten me through those hard times. And I think as we lift others, we are lifted. Also with service, sometimes, I don't know about you, Sherry, but sometimes I feel socially awkward. I don't think you do, but there was a sign that said, I came, I saw, I made it awkward. And totally relate to that. And so for me, to make it less awkward for myself, I do one of two things. Either I pitch in and help however I can, whether it's setting up or cleaning up if it's a big event, or in a more intimate setting, helping do dishes or whatever I can do to serve when I feel that way. But also I'll see someone that looks on the outside the way I feel on the inside, and that's the person I'll talk to. Or I'll say a prayer and say, help me know who needs me. And then I will go and try to find someone that needs a friend that I can talk to. And that helps me when I feel awkward to do those things. So I feel like service is one of those things that we give, but we receive far more than we give sometimes. I think the happiest people I have met are those who reach outward and serve and help others and lift those around them. Simultaneously, I think that when we are too focused on ourselves, it makes us very unhappy. I know for me, when I start to feel unhappy, I try to reflect and think, what am I doing to serve others? Like, what have I been doing lately? And I try to start there. And it's interesting to me that I can feel the difference in the amount of happiness I feel based on how much I am serving others. I don't know. Do you feel like that too, Sherry?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I know my kids probably got really sick of me because if they ever said they were bored at home, I was like, well, go do service. If you're down, it's a sure way to get out of being down. And you see others' needs. And, you know, obviously when you do service, you're serving Heavenly Father. And so that gives you that spirit when you're doing service.
So without further ado, we would like to introduce our guest, Brenda. She is a wife, a mother of two very handsome and very incredible sons who have very beautiful and very incredible spouses / significant others, and is a grandmother of her two treasures, a granddaughter and a grandson, and her family is her world. Brenda was born in Las Vegas, but she grew up mainly in Utah, where she has lived the majority of her life. She graduated from Southern Utah University with a bachelor's degree in communications, and her first job out of college was in the event planning industry, which she loved so much. She stayed in that industry for 27 years, 7 of those years owning her own event planning business. She worked as a travel agent for 6 years and then recently worked in the mental health industry. She has served in many organizations within her church and is always busy doing something. She said she has a nervous energy if she sits too long. Her claim is that she's extremely left-brained, so she hasn't an ounce of creativity, but she can organize the heck out of any room or closet. Her first love besides her family is music and considers that to be her only talent. She is very talented, but she has more talents than that. She plays the piano, sings, taught voice lessons for many years, made a CD, and has even written a few songs. She loves camping, traveling, cooking, a little crafting, which takes creativity, so not her forte, she says, and listening to podcasts. Brenda was taught at a young age the joy of serving others, and she and her husband made it a priority to teach their children to serve. She says when she was growing up, she often came home to a total stranger in their home that her mother had invited to either eat with them or stay overnight. In fact, once her mother brought a young adult age girl home that she saw sitting on a bench looking very lost. The girl was far from home and very homesick, so Brenda's mom brought her home to stay with them for a few days so she could be around people and not feel so alone and sad. That is so sweet.
That's awesome.
Her mom helped this girl find an apartment and get moved in and settled. And this story, she says, is not an unusual one for her childhood household. And Brenda also tells a story when they were on vacation in Haiti and her husband gave the shirt off his back, literally, to a Haitian boy who told her husband he liked his shirt. Off it came, and he gave it to that boy right then and there. Whether it's giving the shirt off your back or helping someone feel less lonely and alone, she believes there are always opportunities to serve no matter our circumstances. Brenda is amazing, and we are so happy to have her here. Welcome, Brenda.
Oh, thank you so much. That is an incredible introduction that I don't feel I deserve, but I love Kimberly, have loved her for so many years, and I'm honored to be a part of your podcast today. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm going to say, I think it's going to be hard for Brenda to talk about herself because I don't think that it's going to come super naturally, but that's what we're kind of asking you to do. So try to do that for us. It's not looking like bragging. We want to know. Kim has told me that it's just your nature to serve and you don't think twice about it. And I think that is awesome. And I think we can all learn from that. So just try to talk a little bit about yourself and not feel awkward about it.
Just brag
Yeah.
like a politician would.
Yes.
Well, if you don't, I will, because you're amazing. So how has service helped you to make lemonade out of the lemons in your life? Both how has it helped you when someone serves you, and how has serving helped you when you serve someone else?
The part about when someone has served me is hard because I don't like asking for help. And I think that's many of us. We really would rather be the giver and on the giving end and the serving end than the receiving end. And that is me and my husband to a T. So it's hard to ask, but I feel like the bonds of friendships that we make when we render service and when we have service rendered to us, that's a two-way street. We are able to have lifelong friendships, lifelong relationships, and those relationships become invaluable, especially if we are on the receiving end. We're humbled just a little bit. It's made me realize that those relationships can form and grow through other people giving us service, and it does work both ways. There was one morning that I was still in bed, and I heard someone at 6 o'clock in the morning shoveling right below my bedroom window. And that was clear up to the back of our garage. And I thought, who is that at our house? And it really was. Someone was out there shoveling that early before they went to work, shoveling the snowstorm from overnight. And I've just been so touched by the kindness of our friends and our neighbors who have helped us. And just to see the love that they are showing for us, we are humbled. Those relationships are solidified and are strengthened. And we see their acts of service in our behalf as something that makes lemonade out of the lemons that we've been dealt just right now.
I really think it's an opportunity for people to give back to you and Frank. And I think it's because you've given so much of yourself to so many people.
Well, thank you. That's very sweet. We don't feel that we do that. We don't do that overly. It's in our nature. It's just, we love the joy. We're selfish. We love the joy that comes from serving. So
Absolutely.
we're
I say that all the
yeah,
time. Yeah, it's kind of a selfish pleasure because it
yeah,
makes you feel so good. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, it's kind of interesting when you're on the receiving end of that. But there have been times that we've seen multiple people out wanting to help and serve and finding it's already done. So your question, I believe, was how has serving helped us when we serve others? And I think we've said a little bit of that, but I just can't even begin to tout the benefits for service to other people, and not just for myself, but I have witnessed countless acts of service done by so many others. And I get to see both sides of the joy that comes from serving. I get to see the ones serving, and I get to see those that are the beneficiaries of the serving. I get to see the ones who are benefiting from and receiving that service. Serving someone else just gives us the opportunity to step outside of our own problems and the loneliness that you mentioned at the beginning. Even if we can step out of that for just a moment, we can forget our own problems, or at the very least, we can see others' problems or their needs, and then we can maybe realize that ours aren't so bad. And if nothing else, if ours are bad, we can step outside of ourselves for just a second and absorb ourselves in someone else's issues by serving them. And when we serve others, then we get a whole other perspective than our own, how do I say, myopic, maybe our own myopic view of our existence, which can sometimes consume us, as you know. So here's an example.
Yeah.
I know of a family that they went to Mexico every Christmas, and that was their Christmas, their trip to Mexico. And when they were there, it wasn't there for necessarily beach time and vacation time, which they got in, but they went to serve. They went to serve and help those in need. And they served as our Savior Jesus Christ served. They fed the hungry, the naked, ministered to the downtrodden. And each Christmas after they returned home, their teenage children would share their experiences and tell of their joy as they served others. They always regarded those Christmases as their best ones ever. Usually I can quote that because that is always what those teenage kids said. That was the best one ever. And for a teenager to be able to acknowledge that serving was better than the receiving and the excitement of what they got. Our kids were in the same boat one year when we did something similar for a family, and they still to this day, as grown adults, talk about that particular Christmas. They don't talk about any other Christmas that and the things that they received and got. They talk about that Christmas that they were able to serve, and the Christmas was steeped in service.
I think that's so good for youth because your teenage years, you're kind of self-absorbed, right?
Exactly.
I think most, not all, but most teenagers are a bit self-absorbed, and it's because they're trying to figure out themselves and
that's by nature.
Yeah, who they are. So being able to have them serve and look outside of themselves is so good.
Yep.
For them, but for all of us too.
I call that a touchdown moment for a parent when teenagers can come to that conclusion because it is our responsibility to teach our children how to serve. They don't just wake up one day as adults and know how to do that and have that in their nature. So it is our responsibility to give them those opportunities.
I like that.
My daughter-in-law does the 12 days of Christmas with my young grandkids, and they've been doing it for years. And so it's such a cool opportunity. They just take 12 days. It's not necessarily the 12 before Christmas, but it is in December, and they do really cool things. They've done, visiting veteran homes, and they've done animal rescues, and they like to go to the library and put dollar bills in children's books, just randomly. And this is like my grandkids' favorite part of Christmas. And my granddaughter, who has the biggest heart, just never, ever wants that to end. And I'm just like, I love that so much, because when you do service like that, you are feeling the Savior's love in a way that I don't know that you do otherwise on a daily basis, because charity is the pure love of Christ.
Exactly, Sherry. And what we're actually doing is teaching them how to make the 365 days of Christmas. By that, love that.
Absolutely.
So, can you think of a time when service has pulled you out of a dark or difficult place? If you are comfortable sharing that.
That's a really good question. And I know that when we lift another's burdens, it does lighten our own. I have watched friends that have sunk into darkness and into depression. And no matter how hard they've tried to self-talk their way out of it, sometimes that there's just an incapability of that. Sometimes that's not going to work based on their own level of depression and their own issues. Here's a story that I can tell you. I love to just share stories because I think it's almost like an analogy. And the Lord taught a lot in parables and stories. So I tend to think that helps us to be able to identify with the answer. So one particular friend that I can actually think of right offhand, she was really struggling, recently struggling with some issues that she faces as a single parent. And I know those struggles are real. I know that they are constant, and especially for her, given her situation. I happened to run into her in the grocery store, and as we chatted, it was very apparent that she was struggling more than ever. And so I began to delve into how I could help her and maybe the reasons behind this as we just talked more into more detail about her situation, her current struggles. And she immediately turned the conversation onto me, and she asked how I was doing and how she could help me. She asked if she could come over and help me clean my house or do my laundry, or if she could bring me a meal. And in retrospect, thinking back of that, I actually just needed someone to talk to and to share some common feelings with that person. And so she kept pressing for more information about me and my situation. And before I knew it, I was unloading my problems on her and questioning if that was the right thing to do in her situation. But as we visited there for quite some time, her spirit lifted and her mood changed, and she found renewed energy and almost like a motive to see the joy in her life. And we both did during our conversation. I let her know at that time how much she had helped me just by listening, and how she had totally turned my pretty crappy day around. And by simply being my friend and being a confidant, listening to someone else's problems rather than fixating on her own, she was able to lose herself a little bit and then brighten her outlook. And as we left each other, we both looked at each other and said, okay, we're good. We can do this. And it took her out of her immediate darkness and her immediate situation, turned my crappy day around, like I said, and we both just felt like we could buck up and step up and we could do it. And we were just going to finish out the day on a higher note than it started. So I think we don't have to clean someone's home, and we don't have to do their laundry, although those are fabulous acts of service. Definitely. I'd love my laundry done. But, perhaps our service is just to simply be present and just listen to someone else.
It's intimidating sometimes to think that we have to do so much, that it has to be this grand thing that we have to do to serve others. And when in reality, a friendly smile, saying hi to somebody, holding the door, any of those small things mean a lot to people. And I mean, definitely if you're prompted to do some big thing, that's great. But I think it's those little things that make a difference in everybody's day-to-day life. And with so much social media, I think interpersonal connections mean a lot, and we need to make those. So I think that's great.
Exactly. There were some neighbors across the street, and they are service oriented and teach their children from the time they come into this world. They teach them service. And one of their young sons, he wanted to take some cookies around to people in the neighborhood. So they went to the store and they bought some cookies and put them on little plates. And we got to be the recipients of those cookies. And he took to maybe 3 or 4 people. His mother shared the story with me, that because we were the recipients, but she shared this story with me shortly after, that after he got home from the first 2 or 3 homes, he ran in the house and he said, "Mom, we have got to go buy more cookies. This is so awesome." And so they had just taught their son how great it feels to serve at a very, he was maybe 10, 11 years old. And just what a great lesson. You talk about your own kids, Sherry. And when you say, well, go out and do some service, by getting out and doing service, they would probably run back in and said, okay, that was awesome. Just like this boy.
And they did.
loved it.
They did. But the thought of it at first is a
Mhm.
little intimidating. And I mean, I think a lot of us are intimidated, like, "Oh, that seems so dumb. Why am I doing that? I'm not
Yes.
going to go and do that. That's, they don't want me to come and bring cookies or, whatever the case may be."
Or they don't know how
Yeah.
to serve, and that's where we come in as parents. But it is, you don't have to go do big things. Just a smile sometimes is serving someone.
I love that you said that we don't have to do big things and just being kind. I was thinking about my dad. He was like that, and he was always smiling at people and holding the door and talking to strangers. And people brightened up when they saw him. When he was sick with cancer, my mom said that when he walked in the room, everybody just lit up because they knew that he was going to make them smile. And when I would go places in my hometown, I would go to the post office or the bank or wherever, and they would see my last name. If it was a place where they could see my last name, and they would ask if I was his daughter, and then they would tell me how much they loved him. And he wasn't giving a lot of monetary things to people, but he was just kind and nice and happy to see them. So Brenda, because you're in a leadership calling, you see a lot of need. And with that, a lot of people who serve and meet those needs, often quietly and without a lot of fanfare. So how does seeing that lift you?
I see that on a daily basis, and especially in my leadership position. I see the quiet service. And when I see that, it lifts me and impresses me every single day. I have witnessed friends and neighbors stepping up to take children to school when a crisis or an emergency has happened in our neighborhood. I've seen meals brought in to give comfort and help. In fact, I once saw an entire group of men finishing a roof of a family whose son had contracted meningitis, and he was fighting for his life. And the father was in the middle of this remodeling project on their home, and winter was fast approaching. So he was just in the throes of putting this roof on when this unfortunate event happened in their family. And his time and energy was then, of course, spent by his son's hospital bed. And here came this large group of men that gathered. They gathered up the material. They gathered together. They got tools that were needed, and they had that roof on and finished in a day.
Wow.
So it's just amazing. In fact, I have another story. I know of a widow who felt really lonely and unneeded. She felt like she had nothing to offer. So I asked her if she would pick up another widow in the neighborhood who was going blind and was now unable to drive, and help to get her to church. Because if she can't drive, she couldn't get to church, and she really wanted to be able to come to church. So I asked this widow if she would pick her up, and she accepted that responsibility. And that eventually sparked a whole new friendship with these two women. And then they decided to invite a couple of other widows and get together and do activities. So now she's got this whole crew, because she just keeps having other sisters and women join in, not necessarily even a widow, but someone who just wants to join into their group. And they go to plays, they attend financial classes together, they sit by each other at church meetings, they do home canning together and gardening. And at Christmas time, they have even gathered together as one big group, and they buy toys. They've done this 2 Christmases in a row, but they buy toys and gifts for families in need at Christmas time. And now this same woman who was feeling lonely and unneeded, she just lights up when she walks into a room. She is immersed in service, and she has a new lease on life. So I see it all the time, how it helps people's lives, both the giver and the receiver, both the one serving and the one being served.
So maybe you've already answered this, Brenda, but what would your advice be to someone who's feeling disconnected and lonely and maybe even really depressed?
I once heard a family member who is a recovering addict say, "There is no high like the high you get from service." And I feel like that's so true, because serving others is, I feel, the very best way to help ourselves to divert our attention away from our own problems. I can't recall a time or an instance when someone has served, lifted another person, and said, I just really hated that experience. It just left me feeling empty and terrible. And I think I'll just go back to being my lonely old self and sit and mope. It's so much better for me to just be lonely and mope. Never in the history of ever have I heard that after someone has served. And it is a proven scientific fact that people need people. We need people. We need each other. And what a better way to combat loneliness and depression and addiction, etc., those kind of things, than to be with other people. So if we can just find a way, find something to do for someone else, make yourself get up in the morning. If you're feeling like you don't even want to get out of bed, make yourself get up and go do something for someone else. You can write letters to missionaries who are serving for your church, or to servicemen and women who are away from their homes and families serving in the armed forces. Pick up the phone and call someone who lives alone. I'm sure they would love a phone call. They're lonely as well. If you can give up your time for a conversation that will surely brighten their day, it might possibly brighten yours. So if you have the strength and the constitution to do physical labor for someone who can't, great, then do it. But if you don't, there are a myriad of ways that you can serve your fellow beings. And it doesn't have to be weeding someone's yard or mowing or getting out and doing physical labor or service for them. Just picking up the phone and calling someone that you think might be lonely because they live alone, or, doing anything will just help remove yourself from your own problems and from your own loneliness. People need people.
Brenda, thank you.
That.
I was thinking about when you were talking about that, there's a children's song called I Feel My Savior's Love, and it says, in serving I am blessed, in giving I receive. And I always feel I receive so much more when I serve than whatever it is that I've given.
The people I know that are the happiest are those who are out and about serving others. I can tell you another story. My husband recently had surgery on both feet. And 3 weeks before that, he had surgery on both hands. So the hands were healing as he had surgery on both feet. And he was getting very tired of sitting with his feet up, watching TV all day, every day. And about a week and a half after his surgeries, and we're looking at a 6-week recovery on one of them, it started to snow, and it snowed, and it snowed, and it snowed, and the snow came down. And during this time frame, we had been served by other people. It was just amazing how people had been serving us, because he's always big on getting the snow removed quickly. Or, if he has to remove it and then go back out because it snows more, he's the one out there doing that and then doing all the neighbors. And it was so hard for him to sit and watch others come over to our house and plow or shovel our snow. That was very, very hard for him. So at one point, he just got his coat on and went out and stood outside so that he felt like he was at least out there with them. And again, very grateful, but very hard to be served, but realizing how others felt so grateful for the service that he had done. So they were over now serving us. And about a week and a half in, again, another big snowstorm hit, and he couldn't handle it anymore. So he wrapped his one foot up that couldn't put a shoe on. He wrapped that up with garbage bags and duct taped it, and got out on the 4-wheeler that has a plow and plowed our walks and our sidewalks and our driveways. And then looked at me and he goes, Brenda, I just can't sit here and not go over to the neighbors. And so then he went over to an elderly couple that have a steep driveway that he knew theirs was not plowed or shoveled at all. So he went over to all the neighbors, and then he went over to this neighbor that he enjoys and loves and wants to help. And it did him such a world of good. His whole disposition changed. Not sure how the foot fared, but his whole psyche and his whole disposition changed for the next several days, because he was able to get out and serve someone else instead of just sitting around and healing.
He had a pin in his toe when he went out and did that. And he also, his hands were still healing. And so his hands were clean after, right, Brenda? Yeah.
his hands and his feet both were in quite a little bit of pain, but the pain was worth it to him
Right.
because he was able to get out and serve others. That's just who he is. And it is a testament to how you can help yourself feel better when you're feeling down or dumpy or healing or whatever. If you can, and I'm not advocating, going against doctor's orders and getting out and doing physical things if you are trying to recover. But even if you're recovering from a surgery and feeling kind of in a depression, and pain can do that, and rehab can do that.
Surgeries
So
can do that.
it can't, surgeries, all those things can do that. And even just chronic pain, pick up the phone and call someone that you think might be lonely. You don't have to put your feet or your hands or any other part of your body in peril, like my husband did. You just go ahead and pick up the phone, do something, or FaceTime someone,
Write a letter.
Skype with. I just feel like that's a testament to getting out of ourselves.
And there was a woman that lived down the street. She has since passed, and she was disabled, and she would send cards to people with pictures on it. And at Christmas time, she volunteered to wrap people's presents, and just so sweet, and really an example to me of no matter what our circumstances. I mean, I think she was legally blind in one eye, and, here she is wrapping people's presents and did a great job, and just an amazing example of no matter what your circumstances, trying to help serve others. And my mother-in-law crochets, and she crocheted blankets for the homeless. She's kind of housebound. She crocheted a bunch of blankets for the homeless and donated them. And I just think there's a number of ways that we can reach out and serve. So Brenda, how do you think service has helped you grow closer to God?
I love that question because we are all his children. We are the instruments that he has to get his work done. And we are doing his work as we serve others. So I feel God's spirit when I am doing his work. And then when I feel his spirit, I feel joy and happiness rather than dumpy and grumpy. I don't know how we can actually be immersed in doing the Lord's work and feel dumpy and grumpy. It just brings us joy and happiness. And many times I've asked God in my prayers to use me as an instrument in his hands, to lead me to those of his children that I can serve. And every single time he has provided opportunities. I strongly doubt that if we ask God how we can serve his children or how we can be an instrument in his hands, that his response is going to be, nah, I can't use you. Nah, thanks anyway. That's not going to happen. He is going to use us if we ask, especially if we ask to be the instrument in his hands. And I know he pours his blessings out upon all of us. And because I know he's poured those blessings out upon me, when I lose myself in serving his children, we find Jesus Christ, his son, as we provide relief or we seek relief. It is by him and through him that our burdens are lifted. And I have a strong, strong testimony of that. I know that it is by him and through him that our own burdens are lifted. And those burdens may be lifted by an astute and in-tune instrument that is in his hands. So let's be that instrument and be that instrument for others.
Yes, we can be someone else's angel and help someone in their time of need. And if we're praying and asking to help those that are in need, we can be an answer to someone else's prayer sometimes.
Exactly. I love the hymn, because I have been given much, I too must give. And I have been so immensely blessed. And I often ask myself, and I ask my Heavenly Father in secret prayer, why am I worthy of such an abundance of blessings? I feel so small. You know what I mean? I feel so small and unworthy and undeserving, and yet I feel so immensely blessed. And this has just been an honor for me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about a topic that is so near and dear to my heart, something that is one of my favorite topics, actually. And you know what? Can I just give a quick plug for the website justserve.org? It is such an incredible website. There are countless ways to serve others and to serve our fellow human beings on this site. And many of the opportunities for service are right here in our own communities. They are organized and ready to go on this site. Just go to justserve, that's one word, .org. And those opportunities are in the works. They're ready, they're organized, and all we have to do is show up with a ready and willing heart to serve, and bring a friend. You might have someone that you help them come out of a depression or have a bad day by bringing them, or bring a group, but just reach out and immerse yourself in service.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for that shameless plug, because that is a great website. And also, just to let people know, you don't have to be a member of any particular religious organization to hop on there and see what there is. And sometimes it's just like the not knowing of what you can do or how you can help or how you can reach out. That is such a perfect way. It's easy. It's easy to find things that you can do. And, maybe this one's not for you, but this one might be, or you're interested in doing this, but you're not interested in these. So that's really awesome. But nobody's going to ask for any membership card for anything. And it's not exclusive to any one religion. So it's open for everyone. I love that. Because sometimes it is hard to think of how you can help and how you can step in and do something. It feels a little overwhelming and intimidating. So that makes it less so, I think.
Well, thank you so much, Brenda. We have loved having you, and you've given us a lot to think about and a lot of ways that we can lift and help others and in turn help ourselves. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, Brenda.
Well, in closing, Sherry, I just wanted to share a few thoughts. So in a talk given at BYU Women's Conference in May of 2023, Camille Johnson said, "Sometimes I think it is easier to provide temporary relief to people we do not know. Do we prefer to send food to Africa or shoes to an orphanage in Peru, imagining in our minds how joyfully our donations will be received? Those are noble efforts and can and should be accomplished as we make humanitarian donations. But sisters, what about the disagreeable lady who lives around the corner from you? Does she need relief? Perhaps the best humanitarian outreach is to reach across the fence or across the street. We often hear the phrases, lift where you stand or bloom where you are planted. What that means is that God puts you in a position to be a conduit through which he provides relief, if you are willing. And when you provide relief to others, I testify that you will find the source of relief. You will find Jesus Christ." And like we've said, I know as we partner with Jesus Christ in helping others, that we'll feel his presence more in our lives and that he will give us more sunshine in our lives. We'll feel happier and brighter and more joy.
I love this. I love this topic. And I think we can all bloom where we're planted. And I love the idea of reaching over the fence because, yeah, it's the grand ideas seem like, oh, yeah, that'd be so cool to be involved with. But are we honking and giving any other gestures to somebody on the road? Or, that's where we have to kind of look inside ourselves and go, okay, service probably starts right here. And it starts with a smile instead of maybe a swear word. I don't know. Just saying.
Yeah. Well,
Just
and
saying.
Also, we haven't talked about serving in the home, and that counts as service. I think as women, we do a lot of service in our homes and serve our children and husbands. They in turn serve us too. But those acts of service that are often unseen and invisible, I think sometimes as moms, we might feel invisible because we vacuum and then it's dirty again, or we fold clothes and then they're on the floor. Those acts all count as service.
I agree. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Lemonade and Sunshine. We have a lot more fun things to talk to you about, and we're happy to have you with us. We would love to hear from you.
Yes, we really would. So please give us your feedback
And let us know if there's any topics you'd like us to cover.
and how you have found the sunshine with the lemons in your lives.
And how do they give us feedback, Kimberly?
You can find us, Lemonade and Sunshine, on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple iTunes. Please give us a review and rating. It really helps us as a new show.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely does. So until next time, we hope that you can feel the sunshine.
And we hope you will tune in next week to Lemonade and Sunshine.